My name is Nancy. I lived a normal life with my parents until about third grade. My dad was always busy with work since I was little, and he was hardly ever home. It was always just mom and me for meals, shopping trips, and amusement park visits. But when I was in third grade, mom finally put an end to this lifestyle. "Dad, where are you going to live now? Can't we see you anymore?" "Robert is just busy with work, so we are living apart for a bit. If Nancy wants to see him, she can, so don't worry." "I see, but won't Dad be lonely?" "Robert is strong. He'll be fine." Mom tried her best to keep me, still a child, from feeling anxious. I now understand that Mom must have been at her limit at that time, but as a child, I couldn't really support her or understand her feelings, and I think I caused her trouble. After the divorce, Dad moved out and we stayed in the house we had always lived in. Mom had started working around the time of the divorce, but Dad had been taking care of most things, so we lived a comfortable life without any hardships. Dad and I would occasionally meet for meals, and when I was little, he would take me on trips once a year. With Mom's support, I grew up and even went to college. In college, I started a part-time job at a pub and worked there for 4 years. I really enjoyed it, feeling it was my true calling. I loved interacting with customers and learning about cooking and drinks. This job made me realize I was suited for the hospitality industry, but when it came to finding a job after graduation, I ended up joining a general company. 3 years into my career, I received an unusual invitation from Dad for a meal. He sounded strange on the phone, saying, "I have something important to discuss, so come alone and don't tell Mom." It was the first time Dad and I were going to meet alone, as meals were usually the three of us or just a divorced couple. They didn't divorce because they hated each other. In fact, they seemed closer after the divorce, and I had secretly hoped they might get back together. "Dad, it's been a while. What's up today?" Just sit down for now." We started talking about various things as soon as we arrived, and the meal was delicious as Dad's recommendation always suited my taste. After we finished our meal and dessert and coffee was served, Dad straightened up. "Nancy, I've been diagnosed with an illness, and I might not have much time left." "What? What do you mean?" "There's a lot I've thought about since getting sick. All I can leave for Nancy is money and the company." "But so suddenly?" "I considered handing the company over to someone else, but I really want you, Nancy, my only daughter, to take it over." I remember that night well. I couldn't sleep at all, feeling overwhelmed like I had been given a lot of homework. As Dad was leaving, he said, "Take your time to think about it. You can tell Jessica about today from me. Have a good talk with her, and then let me hear your decision." I didn't have the energy to talk to my mom that night and just stayed in my room. The next morning, I went out for an early jog. The morning breeze felt refreshing, and I decided to talk to Mom when I got back. I resolved to take over Dad's company while running home. "Nancy, what's up? It's rare for you to get up so early on a day off." "Mom, I need to talk to you. Sit down." I told Mom about the dinner with Dad and everything he told me in order. Mom seemed distant when I mentioned Dad's illness, as if she wasn't listening or couldn't hear. She was probably overwhelmed by the news of Dad's illness and was crying. "Mom, are you listening?" Sorry. So what are you going to do?" "I have decided to fulfill Dad's wish and become the successor of his company." "What? Nancy? Do you realize how big Robert's company is? It's not that simple." Mom looked into my face with a worried expression while crying. I wanted to reassure her in many ways, but looking at Mom, I couldn't find the words. After taking some time, Mom and I thoroughly discussed it, and I decided to take over the company. Mom says she would take care of Dad, who was sick, and they decided to live together. Hearing that, I felt relieved. I left Dad's care to Mom and geared up to focus on work. I quickly completed the resignation process from my current company and made one request to Dad as I was about to join his company. Dad, I have a request. Before being announced as the president, I want to properly see the stores our company runs, so I would like to join as a part-time worker and visit a few stores.
That's a good initiative. If they know a new president is coming, they won't act naturally. Although we don't hire part-timers, I'll arrange for you to help out at various stores. Give it a try.
Thank you. I'll start arranging it right away. I visited several of Dad's stores, and I was impressed by the excellent staff training at each one. Then I ended up working for a few days at the last restaurant as a helper. But unexpectedly, I fell in love with the store manager, David. I felt embarrassed thinking about this during such a critical inspection period, but David's professionalism in switching between work and off-duty, his personality, and looks were just my type. Since I was working incognito, David, of course, thought I was just a part-timer worker trying out for a few days. Having fallen for a man after so long, I valued these feelings and decided to ask David out for a meal on the last day, where I confessed my feelings. It was true that having David as a partner would be a strong asset in managing this large enterprise in the future.
Nancy, thank you. I'm really happy. Now that your help at our store is over, there is no problem if we date, right?
What? Really? David happily accepted my feelings, but I asked him one question. Will you stay the same even if I change a lot in the future?
Huh? Our relationship is just starting, of course. We'll both change in many ways,
David said with a laugh. Feeling guilty as if I were lying since I knew exactly how I would change, I decided to keep quiet about my upcoming role as president a little longer. The next day, I started the handover process to become president. Dad had begun living with Mom, improving his diet and lifestyle, regaining some of his health.
What did you think of our company stores?
I was honestly impressed by the maintenance and staff training at every store I visited. I'm excited to manage such wonderful shops.
I'm happy to hear such praise from Nancy.
Dad smiled and listened to more of my stories. I planned to tell him about David later, but Dad unexpectedly asked me about him.
You met David, right?
Yes, at the last store I visited.
How was he?
Well, everyone, including the managers, was professional, but David was exceptional.
And did you fall for him?
What? Why?
I thought Nancy would definitely fall for him if she met him.
I couldn't keep it from Dad, so I told him about my relationship with David and that I was thinking about the future.
That's great. There is no problem with David. I approve.
If Dad says so, it must be right.
Actually, David's family runs an accounting firm. There was a time when their business was unstable, and they consulted me. Since then, I've entrusted him with managing our company's accounting department.
Dad had taken a liking to David and had met his parents right after the consultation. They were both personable and Dad liked them, so they have had a business relationship since then. Hearing this, I felt even more confident about my future with David. I haven't told David about being the president's daughter or taking over as president, so please keep it quiet, Dad.
Why not?
I want to be seen as just a girl first without the company being involved.
Okay, Nancy, you're surprisingly girly.
With that, I had reported everything to Dad and the company transition went smoothly. My relationship with David was also going well. This might be the busiest and happiest time of my life. I was fulfilled every day. The transition was big and some procedures took time, so months flew by quickly. Dad had moved in with Mom and was actively receiving treatment, improving significantly. He only came to work when absolutely necessary, enjoying his time with Mom. It's been a while since we had a meal together, just the two of us.
Nancy, you always seem busy. Are you taking care of yourself? What kind of work are you doing now?
I'm just a part-timer worker, so it varies, but I'm fine.
That's good. I want to introduce you to my family soon. Can you come over?
David's invitation was unexpected as we hadn't been dating long. His dad invited us to a family trip to Italy and he wanted to introduce me to his family before that. I was nervous but happy and went to greet David's parents, Thomas and Patricia. I had heard about them from Dad and they were very nice, which eased my nerves. We were having tea comfortably when David's brother and sister walked in. They worked at the Thomas's accounting firm and I had heard about them, but they had a strict vibe.
Nice to meet you. I'm David's brother, Danielle.
I'm David's sister, Susan. Thank you for having me today. I'm Nancy. They were different from the parents with a somewhat cold aura. David often complained that he didn't share much in common with Danielle and Susan as they were too serious and intelligent. He mentioned they were likely to take over the firm.
You're going on the Italy trip with us, right?
I'm sorry for intruding like this. You're quite bold, aren't you? Came to show your face in a hurry just for the trip? I was taken aback, but they laughed it off and the conversation moved on. So, what do you do for work, Nancy? I'm currently doing part-time jobs. Part-time jobs? And you're older than David, right? That's kind of funny, not really something to talk about.
Hey, that's rude. What's wrong with that?
Typical of David. With parents who are respectable accountants, he ignores that and works frivolously in a restaurant catching only this kind of woman. In a low voice, David whispered to me,
I'm sorry.
Seeing his expression, I reminded myself that I was here because I loved David and shouldn't get upset over this. Don't worry, Nancy. These two are married and will bring their families on the trip. Maybe your family could come too? That would be a bit much.
There's no rush. The trip is still a while away. Take your time to think about it.
I managed to get along with the parents that day, but revealing my true identity became more complicated after meeting David's family. On the way home, David seemed concerned.
I'm sorry, are you okay? Daniel and Susan can be pretty intimidating even to me. Tough for someone meeting them for the first time, right?
Maybe it wasn't a good idea to join the family trip so suddenly.
It's the first time I've brought a girlfriend home. I think my parents sensed I'm serious about you. That's why they invited you.
Serious? As in,
I want to marry you, Nancy.
I was honestly happy to know that David was thinking about a future with me, but I also felt anxious about how he might react once he knew the real me. It was time to tell him soon. If I waited until the official company announcement, he would find out anyway, but I preferred to tell him before that. With a mix of urgency and the need for caution, I returned home with complicated feelings. I was so busy every day that I barely had time to think about how to resolve this situation. After starting the transition process, I was overwhelmed with paperwork, signing documents, and meeting countless new people almost to the point of panic. When I mentioned the trip to Dad, he said,
Let's announce the new president right after you return from the trip.
Dad, David's parents invited my family to join the trip too.
I'm sorry, but with my illness and everything, it's difficult for me to leave the US right now.
Yeah, I understand.
But Jessica could go, right? We're divorced after all, so it will be strange for us both to go. You've told David you were raised by a single mother, haven't you?
Yeah, I haven't had the chance to bring it up, and I haven't felt it necessary to mention it yet.
This trip could be a good opportunity to do so.
Right. I had almost forgotten, but technically I was from a single-parent family. When I told Mom about the trips, she seemed hesitant to leave Dad in the US, but he insisted.
I'm busy with work that needs to be finished before you return, so you should go.
So it was decided that only Mom would accompany me. I'm actually looking forward to going to Italy. It's been a while. That's great. On the morning of our departure, I planned to talk to David about my impending presidency during the trip. Once we returned to the US, the company would make a big announcement, so I needed to tell him first. I was nervous for a different reason too. This would be the first time Mom would meet David and his family, and my second time since that day. There was an odd tension. We were to meet at the airport, and Mom and I headed to the meeting point. Mom, I'm really sorry if this trip makes you uncomfortable. Why are you saying that before we even go? Is something wrong? It's just David's siblings? Well, we won't know until we meet them. No point in worrying now. I wouldn't want to go on a trip with a family I didn't know, but Mom was cheerful and didn't show any discomfort, saying she was looking forward to it for my sake. Having Mom with me made me feel more confident, and I was grateful to her. Good morning, Thomas, Patricia. This is my mom. Thank you for inviting us today. It's a pleasure to meet you. David's parents were as kind to my mom as they had been to me when we first met. David arrived soon after, and after introducing Mom, the five of us waited together for everyone else. Daniel, Susan, and their families arrived one by one, and after introducing my mom, we all prepared to board the plane. We checked in our luggage and were waiting in the lobby for our departure when Susan made an uncomfortable comment. It's unusual to join someone else's family trip after such a short relationship. Lucky your boyfriend's family runs a business, huh? Yes? I thought I might be intruding, but since Nancy's boyfriend invited us, it would have been rude to refuse.
I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I'm glad we could meet like this.
Right. It's rare for our schedules to align, so it's a great opportunity to talk and spend time together on this trip. The atmosphere was tense from the beginning, and I was feeling uneasy about spending several nights together on the trip. Susan's remarks only added to my anxiety. What right do you have to say that? It's just Nancy adapting to our schedule. She's only a part-time worker and saying it's a good opportunity. You just tagged along on someone else's family trip. Susan, that's not what I meant. Can you not mooch off our family's money just because you're invited doesn't give you the right to be so brazen?
Susan, are you picking a fight with my girlfriend? Stop ruining the mood before the trip.
We have already paid for our part of the trip and have no intention of depending on you for expenses during the trip. You've paid? I wasn't aware of that, but of course you should pay. I'm not talking to Nancy's mom, but to Nancy. It's obvious you're after money, not even a full-time employee getting involved with our family. I'll make it clear, as long as I'm here, Nancy won't get anything from us. When Mom and I decided to go on the trip, we chose to pay our own way, refusing any offer to cover our expenses. We had already settled everything before the trip. Mom said by paying ourselves, we can participate without any hesitation. Susan, unaware of this, wrongly assumed we were being disrespectful and hurled insults at us. I decided to switch my attitude and laughed loudly. My sudden laughter surprised everyone except Mom, who probably knew what I was about to do. I understand, Susan, if you dislike it so much, Mom and I won't go on the trip. Oh, you're leaving? That's really a shame. However, I'm canceling two things. Not just the trip, but also our company's dealings with yours. What? My meaningful statement caused quite a stir. Then I heard Dad's voice calling my name from behind. Dad, what are you doing here?
I was nearby and thought I'd make it in time to see you off. Robert, the CEO? It's been so long. Wait, Nancy, you know him? Nancy is my only daughter. After this trip, she'll succeed me and become the new CEO of our company. Please attend the inauguration ceremony.
The last names are different, and I have never heard anything about this. Dad's revelation made everyone understand my earlier statement. Susan's face turned pale, and David's parents seemed shocked by her actions, creating an awkward atmosphere.
Did my arrival cause any inconvenience? We apologize. Susan said some really disrespectful things to Nancy. Is that so? Nancy, are you okay?
Dad, you're leaving the company in my hands, right?
Of course, Nancy, you'll soon be the president. Fulfill your duties responsibly.
I'm sorry for my earlier rudeness. I truly apologize. Seeing Susan's panic state, Dad seemed surprised by the commotion. He looked at me concerned. Susan, our flight is soon. Are we still okay to travel together? Of course. Let's go. Thanks for seeing us off, Dad.
Take care and get along with everyone.
With Dad's sent out, we flew to Italy as planned. The trip was eventful, starting with David bombarding me with questions. Susan kept apologizing and David's parents repeatedly said sorry to Mom. It turns out David's family accounting firm would have gone under without our company's business. Nancy, will you continue to do business with our firm? I'm dating David with marriage in mind, so I would like to keep doing business with your family, but if Susan can't accept me, that naturally complicates things. I was wrong. Please forgive everything. It was only Susan who showed a drastic change in attitude once she knew who I really was. Throughout the trip, she clung to me, trying to appease me in various ways. Despite my assurances that it was okay, she seemed desperate to maintain the business relationship, showing how important the firm was to her. I decided to let her do as she wished. David and his parents remained unchanged and supportive throughout the trip. Surprisingly, David had arranged a special date just for the two of us one evening. David, thank you for reserving such a lovely restaurant.
Thank you for joining my family on this trip despite the unpleasant experience.
It was worth it despite everything.
I was really surprised to find out Robert is your dad.
I'm sorry for keeping it a secret. I wanted you to see me for who I am, beyond the company. I planned to tell you when the time was right. At dinner, I mastered the courage to ask, will you continue our relationship even after I become president?
David assured me, your job doesn't change how I feel about you. I've always wanted to marry you.
I hope once I'm president, you'll consider becoming the vice president and help me run the company. Dad supports this idea too.
Me? A vice president?
It would mean leaving your current job though.
I've always managed stores, so I need time to think, but I'm thrilled about the marriage proposal.
After the trip, Mom and I, along with David's family, became closer. Back in the US, we gathered both families for a dinner to officially announce our marriage. The recent trip helped ease any tension, making for a pleasant gathering. That day, Dad joined us and we discussed the future of the company among other things.
Allow me to take this opportunity to announce something personal. I'm officially getting back together with Nancy's mom, who is here with us.
When did this happen?
Even after our divorce, we maintained a good relationship. Jessica's dedication during my illness made me realize how much she means to me.
Robert, it's embarrassing to say this in front of everyone. Mom blushed but seemed happy. I was overjoyed, having waited years for this moment. Later, I became the president and David and I got married. Susan, who once disliked me, now visits our home and has become a good friend. It's particularly gratifying as we work closely in business. I hope to go camping with our future children, fulfilling dreams I couldn't when I was young. David declined the vice president role to remain the store manager, respecting his wish to stay on the ground. I plan to entrust him with training staff in customer service inspired by the excellent service that moved me. David has a knack for hospitality, and I want all our employees to emulate that. Although I don't know what the future holds, I'm committed to cherishing family time and continuing the company Dad entrusted to me, working hand in hand with David and valuing our employees.